So this is the Vision with Execution show. I'm Adam Torkelson. My guest is Dr. Lorne Lavine, DMD, owner of The Digital Dentist. Thank you, Dr. Lavine, for coming on my show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Now, I am going to read some of your bio here. And so forgive me if I misspeak or trip over something. It is not intended to be offensive in the slightest, but since you are awesome and have some amazing credentials, there's a bit to go through, but I'm going to start off here. Dr. Lavine has vast experience with technology systems. He is a CompTIA certified A+ computer repair technician, security professional, and is a HIPAA certified security professional. There we go. That's the important piece. HIPAA.
Yeah.
The big one. A consultant and integrator. He has extensive hands-on experience with most practice management software, image management software, digital cameras, intraoral cameras, computers, networks, and digital radiography systems. And here's the last bit that I'll go into real quick because we have a shared history here. Dr. Lavine writes for many well-known industry publications and lectures across the country. Now, one area of our crossover there is that I have also written for maybe not so many well-known industry publications because I am not a dental professional in any sense of the word, but I have a journalism degree from the university here in Utah. And if anyone happens to Google my name, I've spent the last 15 years trying to manage what people find about me online. And that's kind of the extent of why I started writing. But I'm curious, in your industry and in your experience, what does the writing do for you? Or what are you trying to accomplish with the publications that you're writing?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I love writing. I've always journaled when I was younger. I loved just the whole process of writing. Initially, I think I started doing it as a means to an end. That it established my credentials, established me as an industry leader, as Lorne knew a little bit what Clay was talking about. And if that continues to this day, that I think people see me in various venues. They might see me on Dental Town. There's frequent posted there. As you mentioned, I do lecture all over North America. Interviewed on some other podcasts, dental specific podcasts. And I think it just helps to continue to establish me as a hopefully thought leader and as someone who's active and involved in the community. So, but at the end of the day, I love doing that. There's no way to get good. You can't use AI anymore. I think most of the people who are publishers, they have all kinds of tools to see if you're, if AI wrote the article. I could never find that AI could really capture my voice and how I wanted it to be. But so every article that I write is written from scratch. They're usually about 750 words or so. That takes me an hour to really try to find new ways of saying the same things. So I just love doing it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up AI because that was, as somebody who does a fair amount of writing myself, AI has helped speed up certain aspects of my writing, especially things like editing for grammar and doing some basic fact checking.
Yeah.
And so I love AI for that as sort of a companion to my own creative process. But like you said, people, editors, people that run large magazines, they're pretty savvy these days, being able to jump on stuff that's been generated by AI mostly. I am curious though, how do you feel in general about AI and where it's at or going?
I think it's a double-edged sword. I think in dentistry, there is a lot of good right now. Most of the best uses of AI that I've seen has been on its clinical end of things, whether it's from a diagnostic standpoint, helping practices handle some of their, some of the tools, things are a little less than fun for staff to be doing. but I also feel that, over the long run, it could cause some problems. I've seen a number of systems that have, for example, AI receptionists. And I think the process just isn't right there. I think people have not a difference still between an AI individual and a human. Most of the practices that I work with are solo or small group practitioners. And, I would love to work with the DSO, but that's really not my audience, not the people I deal with. And I think one of the things that uh, dentists need to do to maintain their independence is to separate themselves from the corporate dentistry healthcare. And that's difficult to do when you're using these systems that people just don't feel like it's got your personal touch to it. Most of the practice we work with, there was actually just the office manager telling that they've known for 10, 15, 20 years. And they like that person, like to have that level of communication. And that's really hard to do with AI. So I do think it's a great tool. I think it can help with a lot of the mundane aspects of running a practice, but I also fear that some practices are over relying on it and it takes away a lot of personal touch.
Yeah, I like that take. And I'm glad you clarified who the groups are that you like to work with, right? It's as opposed to a DSO. And for those of my listeners who don't know what that means, what is a DSO?
So DSO stands for Dental Service Organization. So one thing that became very apparent to me as I went through my dental training and certainly started my own practice is that dentists, for the most part, are not known for having great business systems. We don't learn that stuff in school. We don't learn how to manage people, how to run a practice. We learn the clinical and the technical aspects of dentistry. Now, if you're lucky, you can come out, you work with established dentists for a number of years, you eventually become an upsetter of your own practice. So, but the reason that DSOs came about is the understanding that because dentists may not always have the best business systems in place, a DSO, that business background, that they have the ability to have more efficient business systems in place. A DSO might have 40, 50, 100 practices under their roof. They can certainly get better pricing when it comes to supplies. And I think for a lot of dentists, I think there was a study done when I was in dental school back in the 80s, and it gave dentists, a choice. If you could work on dental forms, which are basically like artificial teeth, versus real patients, how many of you, and make the same amount of money, how many of you would you do that? And something like 50% of the people said, yeah, I'll do that. And it's just amazing that, we're so focused on how much we like to do the clinical aspects of things. So I think also, related to that is that a number of dentists really don't want to have to deal with the day-to-day running of a practice. There's so much involved in experience and running managing your team and ordering supplies and all the things that come up. And I think a lot of people just want to be focused on doing dentistry, get that paycheck and you can go home every night. A DSO provides that because in essence, the dentists are employees for the most part, in DSOs. So all they do is show up and the schedule's full and they get paid a salary and they're done. So I think that, we're seeing a lot more push towards that. A lot of dentists, as they're getting closer to retirement, are opting to go with DSOs versus trying to sell the practice. But my focus still tends to be on the independent private practitioner, which I think still, anecdotally, I think they still constitute probably 80%, 75 to 80% market. But DSOs were zero 10 or 15 years ago. We're really seeing a shift for a lot of people moving towards it. And I'm not anti-DSO. As I said, I would love if someone came to me and they had 50, 60 practices that they wanted me to support from an IT standpoint. I'd be an idiot to say no. But most of them tend to have their own in-house IT because, to run an organization that long, you won't need full-time dedicated to your organization. Kind of that explains it a little better for people that aren't familiar with what a DSO is and what they do.
Yeah, I think that was a killer explanation, actually. So
Thank you.
thank you for that, actually. Now, I do like to keep my podcast episodes around 30 minutes or so. So I want to make sure that I give you the chance to, number one, talk about what it is that's really top of mind for you right now. And if you want, you could answer two of my questions that I typically ask my guests that in the context of framing it so that this really gets your message out. I don't want to redirect this so that it has my message or my uh, goals or anything. This is the Dr. Lavine episode here, so let's make this all about you. However, here's the two common questions I ask my guests. First one, what is your vision for 2026? And again, that can be anything, business, personal, whatever.
Yeah.
But then the next question, I think this is the one that really my listeners like the most, is how are you going to execute on that vision and turn it into a reality?
Okay. Those are good questions. I see us right now as being a trusted technology partner for our clients. My vision for next year is really to become the trusted partner, the most trusted person in dentistry if not for DSOs, at least for independent dental practices. People kind of talk about managed service providers like us and as their IT provider. I don't want to be known just as the IT provider. I want to be a part of that practice of how they protect their practice, how they protect their patients, how they protect their livelihood. I think too many dentists right now see technology as a source of stress when it really should be a competitive advantage that you would have over practice. Most dental practices want to have fewer surprises. They want to have smoother operations, better security. And as you mentioned, with AI and other things coming into dentistry, they want to have some guidance. The landscape is changing constantly, whether it's cyber threats or compliance or AI or, as I mentioned, consolidation from DSOs. So, really, I don't think my vision is all that complicated. We just want to help dentists who are independent to stay independent, to stay profitable and confident that the technology that they have is working with them or for them rather than against them. In order to get there, I have found three basic things that we need to do today, which we've done in the past, but I really want to refocus on that for this year. First and most importantly is that I want to make sure I'm really focusing on education versus just trying to get them to get services. I do webinars all the time. I'm writing, as you mentioned. I do one-on-one conversations with them. I think it's really important, again, to understand why, the decisions that they make affect them so heavily, especially when it comes to security and compliance. It's important that they have that understanding before I try to sell them anything. I've always thought that an educated client is my best client because they understand what they actually need. The second thing is that we're possible. Was really standardization is the thing that we really need to focus on. We are always refining our systems, the software that we use, the processes. We need to make sure that every client has the exact same system. And it's not always easy. There's a difference between a dental practice that has 2 laboratories and 5 computers and is, one dentist, one hygienist, one person up front versus, a large group practice, with a dozen dentists and 3 locations. But we still need to be able to standardize it from an IT standpoint. We can't have multiple systems and multiple ransomware systems. We have to have the same system for everybody. So it also means we need to be able to scale. The third is, I've worked with marketing companies in the past, and a lot of them, their advice is, why focus on dentistry? I mean, there's so many other, niches out there, and you're in healthcare. You could do physicians, you could do chiropractors. I just think having the DMD after my name gives me instant credibility. I walk the walk. It's not has nothing to do with my IT skills. But the fact that I'm a doctor, should see me as a caller rather than the computer guy. So we can't be everything to everyone, but I think really focusing on just dental practices, and we have a better understanding of the issues. We can be more proactive in how we take care of those issues. As I said, we taught that language. So, if I do that well, if I continue with my education and scaling and standardization and sticking with dentistry, I think the growth is that's how it's going to take care of itself.
Awesome. I love it. Now,
And
one of the things you just said actually sparked a connection for me. One of the things I do in my world of enterprise consulting is I work with some medical practices, some dentists, but not a whole lot, mainly general practices and rural hospitals. But one of the things we focus on helping them do is take advantage of what's called the research and development tax credit. And one of the things you just said in your item number 2 was how often you go back and redo your processes
yeah,
and look at that. And it sounded like that's a recurring activity for you on an ongoing basis, is to look at the processes, make sure that they're amazing, redo, rework, retool, look at different options. That activity is something that my team and I also look at, because that makes it so that a practice can take advantage of that R&D tax credit. And what we've seen typically, this is average, but on average, a practice that, let's say their payroll is like 5 million a year and they've got like half a dozen people on staff or something. 10% of that total payroll expense usually qualifies as the amount you can take on that R&D tax credit. It's not a perfect calculation, but that's kind of what we've seen across the board. Have any of your clients ever taken advantage of this?
a few have, partially because of the fact that I have. I'm very familiar with what you're talking about. The first time we did, it was a little squirrely because we didn't have the best records of, because when my guys are working all day long,
Right.
when are they actually working with clients? When are they tweaking systems or whatever? So we had to start, after the first time we did it, we had to really start tracking. Here's the hours that we do, and we have lots. We have about users as we're going on. So yes, we have had a number of clients over the years that have taken advantage as well. I did a webinar with somebody with like a tax specialist a few years ago, specifically on the R&D tax credits. So yes, I'm familiar with it. I do it for my own business, and we certainly think would be something that any healthcare practice can certainly take advantage of as well.
Well, I'm glad to get that confirmation from you. That's what we've seen as well. 80% of the practices that we walk into have not taken advantage of it for one of two main reasons. You nailed one, which is they do not take very good notes when they're updating things, who's doing what and when. So there's a little bit of training that they have to go through to actually get their record keeping up and stuff so that it does qualify. And then the other part of the time, they've never even been told that they should take advantage of it. For whatever reason, their tax professional didn't want to bring it up or whatever, I don't know. And by the way, I'm not a CPA, so nobody can take this for any kind of professional or legal tax advice. So I just want to put that disclaimer out there. But this is what me and my team see all the time. And the big, beautiful bill, a lot of people don't like it. And some people appreciate it, whatever their stance is on it. There's a little known nuance in there about the R&D tax credit specifically, where practices can look back 2 or 3 years right now and capture that credit if they haven't yet.
Right.
but that ends in June of 2026. So anybody listening, if you haven't taken advantage of it, you've got about 6 months before that 3-year look back closes off. So last question then before we wrap up. You currently live in California, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So I lived in Sacramento about 20 years ago. And back then it was probably a lot different than it is now. But I loved my time in California. And your bio says that you had a practice in Vermont.
Correct.
And then you moved to California in 2002.
Yeah.
So what, if you don't mind, what prompted that move for you?
Yeah. So I have to give you the Reader's Digest version because it's a long story, but I knew pretty early on in my periodontal career that I didn't love doing perio. It's just, the surgical aspect of it really attracted me to the profession. In order to end up in a periodontist office, usually because you don't have the best home care. You're not brushing and flossing. A lot of our patients were diabetics, smokers, whatever. And I found out early on in my practice that I'm the type of person that likes to feel I do the same thing over and over. I'm going to get the same results over and over, give or take. That's not the case in periodontal patients. If they're not maintaining, you can do the best surgeries in the world. If they're not going to brush and floss and take care of things, they're going to be back in your chair within a year, 2 years, which is exactly what I was finding because it's hard to change those habits. Our family owned the largest electronic distributorship in Canada. So I grew up with technology. So when I started my own practice, I built my own computers. I was doing my own networking. And this is back in the early 90s. So technology was just starting to take off in dentistry. Digital x-rays, infrared cameras, 3D imaging get conference until a few years later. But this was long before our supply companies that now dominate our industry came over the whole. So it was getting all the small little programs to work together, which I had a knack of doing. And I was doing it in between patients and evenings and weekends and helping out my colleagues. And then I heard that California had a shortage of dentists. This is back in like 2000, 2001. And they were going to make it easy for anyone that was in good standing to move to California and get a license right away. Normally, the California boards are very challenging to take, and I hadn't done general dentistry in 10 years. I've gone to USC for college. I have friends and family out here. And I thought, you know what? I had just turned 40. This is my opportunity to do both, to practice, to do the IT stuff that I love. I'll practice 4 days a week. I'll do the IT 1 day a week. Maybe in 5, 10 years, I can flip the ratio. So I did give up my practice in Vermont. I moved out here trying to practice right away. They forgot to mention the 15,000 plus 8 on the waiting list. So I got here and I found out it's going to be at least a year before I could get my license, which at the time I'm like, oh crap, this is not so good. In retrospect, it was the best that could have happened for you because I really had to apply myself to this. A year later, when I could get my license, I was like, I didn't love perio the first time around. Why am I going to do it again? I have employees now. I'm traveling. I'm writing. I love it. And I never went back to practice. So, and I got really, really lucky that the editor of the largest dental journal had reached out to me. He'd seen a couple of my articles and said, hey, I want you to be the technology editor in the magazine. And then a guy named Howard Ferran, who runs the Dental Talent website, had just started and seen some of my posts and said, hey, can you be the moderator for all our technology forums? And so within weeks of me moving here, my name was getting out all across the country and it just took off. And I never really looked at it. So I missed some of the patients I had. I missed some of the people that were part of the day-to-day practice. But I still work with dentists every day, as I did when I was a periodontist for 10 years. And like I said, I have that credibility having those 3 letters after my name. So it worked out all in one. There's no doubt those first couple of years were somewhat lean. I was eating a lot of cereal for a while. It all worked out long. No regrets.
Awesome. I love that. Such a cool story.
Thanks.
So Dr. Lavine, we do have to say goodbye. The time goes by quickly, but before we sign off, what would you say is the best way for a dentist who wanted to work with you? How should they do that?
I think the easiest is to go to my website, which is thedigital.dentist.com. There on every page on the website, there's a contact us form. We're offering for any of the people that are listening to this a free practice evaluation. So, normally we charge $1,000 for it. Most dentists just don't know what they don't know. They don't know where they're at from a HIPAA standpoint, from a cybersecurity standpoint. So our pick is, as I mentioned, I really want to express education over selling. So we want them to understand where they're at. So we'll do that evaluation. It takes 30, 40 minutes. We'll then do a follow phone call with myself and the dentist. And we'll go over the findings. Here's what we saw. Here's what we recommend. Here are your options. Here's all the items would cost. Anyone that's ever worked with me knows that I am the furthest thing from a hard skill you'll ever find. I want to give people the choices and the options, and of course, we'd be thrilled to work with them. But if it's not the right fit, they have all the information that they need to find someone else that's a better fit for their practice. So I think that's the best way. They can call my office on toll free numbers 866-204-398. Extension 200 gets you to Candace, my office manager. If you just search the digital dentist on Google, on Facebook, on Twitter, X, on LinkedIn, whatever, I'm there. So, you can reach out to me on any platform. I'm all around.
Awesome. Thank you for that offer. I do hope all of the people listening who when applied to, I hope they take advantage of that, because that knowledge that you have of 40 years in the business and your IT background and all that knowledge, that is valuable. And I think that's a wonderful offer. So I appreciate that. And
Pleasure.
It's been a great pleasure getting to know you just a little bit. And thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.